Good evening and welcome to this live telephone town hall. Right now we are dialing out to thousands of homes in your area. And on this telephone town hall tonight we have Congressman Tom Malinowski, who will be joining us in just a moment. He's going to be answering your questions live, including questions about the federal response to COVID-19. While we wait for a few more friends and neighbors to get on the line, I want to tell you how you can participate in tonight's call. Simply press 0 if you have a question. Press 0 if you have a question. When you press 0, you're going to be placed in a queue, and then our operators are going to assist you in asking your question to Congressman Malinowski. He's going to answer as many questions as he possibly can in the time we have tonight. If you do have a question and you'd prefer not to go live on the air, just still hit 0 and then let your operator know that you would like us to read the question for you. We want to do whatever's most comfortable for you. We also want to get your email addresses, so please press 7 on your keypad to give your email address to the congressman. He's going to keep you up to date on COVID-19, the federal response, and all kinds of important updates from his office. So please press 7 on your keypad throughout the call. We have operators standing by to help you. Just real quickly again, before we turn the call over to Congressman Tom Malinowski, we welcome everyone who's joined the call. We're going to be answering your questions live, including questions about the federal response to COVID-19. Press 0 if you have a question on your keypad. Press 0 if you have a question. You can also press 7 to give your email address to get the latest updates from Congressman Malinowski's office. With that, Congressman, we will turn the call over to you, Congressman Tom Malinowski.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining this call at what I know is a very, very difficult time for all of us in New Jersey and across America. And hopefully on this call we'll be able to share some useful information and take your questions about what's going on and what can be done. The numbers are, of course, very grim for New Jersey. We've had over 116,000 COVID-19 cases tested. The true number is probably significantly higher. We've lost 6,700 plus New Jerseyans to this terrible disease. And I imagine every single one of us on this phone call knows at least one person on that list. It's not a number for us. But here is some hopeful news. Since the peak of this disease in New Jersey, which we hit in mid-April, hospitalizations, use of intensive and critical care beds, use of ventilators in our hospitals, all are slightly down. All of those are slightly down in the last couple of weeks. And at that peak, a couple of weeks ago, there was a day when we had just 100 critical care beds left in the state of New Jersey. That is how close we were to our public health system breaking down. Well, it didn't break down because of what we're doing. It didn't break down because all of us have been following the public health advice, practicing social distancing. All of us decided that we were willing to accept very serious personal sacrifices to keep our friends and neighbors and loved ones healthy and to, above all, keep that public health system from breaking down so that our nurses and our doctors could do their jobs. Now, all of this has come, we know, at great economic cost as well. And this is where I've been focusing my efforts, where Congress has been focusing its efforts. We passed several pieces of legislation, as you all know, including the CARES Act several weeks ago, in which we created these $1,200 stimulus payments that have been going out to folks across the country, and $500 payments for kids. The enhanced unemployment program for people who've lost their jobs, and the Paycheck Protection Program, which provides forgivable loans to our small businesses. Now, I know very, very well that enhanced unemployment system has been incredibly slow and unresponsive. We've been dealing with a lot of cases on behalf of my constituents, so I know how difficult it's been. That program for small businesses, a lot of the early money went out to larger companies. Banks were, particularly the biggest banks in our country, were giving preferential treatment to their existing loan customers. We heard I think all of us, the story in the last few days that the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team got one of those small business loans. It makes me absolutely livid. And then the money ran out from the first allocation that the Congress made. So last week, Congress passed what we're calling an interim bill, which added $310 billion to that Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses. And we insisted on setting aside a big share of it for smaller banks, community banks, for credit unions, financial institutions that are used to dealing with smaller customers, with the pizza shop and the bagel shop and the flower shop and little gas stations and everybody else in our community that needs help the most and that was put in the back of the line by some of the larger banks. And I've been hearing in the last couple of days a lot more small businesses in our district getting their loans approved and receiving money. We're not where we need to be on that. We're working really hard right now to pass another big coronavirus bill. There will be more fixes to the small business program. That's certainly what I'm insisting on. And I'm also working very, very hard right now to try to make sure we get relief for our state government and for our local governments across New Jersey and America. Our small towns are hurting very badly right now because tax revenues are drying up, and we need them to be able to keep paying the cops and firefighters and emergency responders and our teachers and doing all the other things that we rely on them to do. Now, how do we get out of this? I know everybody is, I think, at our wit's end right now with the isolation and with staying at home. It's the right thing to do. It has saved the lives of thousands and thousands of people in our state, but it can't go on forever. I think there are really only two ways that we can stay safe through this epidemic. One is through lockdowns, continuing this one, and then if and when the virus comes back in the fall, just having more lockdowns, and none of us want that. The other way, the other responsible way, is to test enough people for coronavirus, isolating those who test positive, tracing the contacts of those who test positive so that everybody else can begin to go back to their normal lives safely. I think many of us saw the story in the last few days about Vice President Pence going up to the Mayo Clinic, and he didn't wear his protective mask. And people were critical of him, so he said, look, I don't need to wear a mask because I get tested every few days at the White House, and all my staff get tested every few days at the White House. And my reaction to that is, well, I am a little critical of the vice president, but my main reaction is that everyone ought to be able to say that. Everybody ought to have the kind of access to testing that allows us to safely and responsibly resume our normal lives. And we're not where we need to be on that in New Jersey yet. We've now gotten to the point where in my congressional district, every county's got a drive-through testing site. That's good, but we're still only testing symptomatic people. And we got to do much, much better than that. Another piece of good news, in the bill that we passed last week, we provided $25 billion to create a national testing strategy in the United States. The state of New Jersey now needs to submit a plan to the federal government in Washington for how we're going to ramp up that testing, contact tracing, and isolation plan that can get us out of this. And the federal government will provide support. And so I'm working with the governor's office and pushing them really hard to get that plan down to Washington so that I can fight for them and make sure that New Jersey gets the help that it needs. That offer of help extends to every single one of you individually who's facing trouble right now. We have been working overtime in my office, helping people who have trouble with the unemployment system, small business owners who need help with the loans that they're supposed to be getting. Every single one of my staff members, including my legislative staff in Washington, is now working pretty much full-time serving our constituents person by person. And we will continue to do that until it's no longer necessary. So if you need help, please reach out. We will do our very, very best to help you through this very difficult situation. And with that, I'm really looking forward to getting your comments and suggestions and to taking your questions today. We're going to try to take as many as we can live, but we will find that we have a way to get back to everybody who has a question if you leave it in the voicemail that will be available at the end of this call. So with that, operator, let's turn it over to the audience for questions.
Very good. Folks, if you've joined us in the last few minutes, you're on a live telephone town hall with Congressman Tom Malinowski, and we are taking questions live. Just press 0 on your keypad if you have a question. Press 0 on your keypad if you have a question. Please also press 7 on your keypad to submit your email address to the Congressman's office. It's important that you do that so that you can receive the latest updates from his office on COVID-19 and other important issues. Please press 7 on your keypad now. We'll take our first call. This is Alan. Alan, can you please tell us where you're calling from and what your question is, please?
Good evening. I live in Milburn Township, and Congressman Malinowski, I'd like to thank you very much for your leadership during this crisis. I am an independent contractor, and I'm asking this question on behalf of other independent contractors. I applied for unemployment insurance with the state of New Jersey and was denied as I fully expected. I was told that they have had some difficulty implementing the PUA program with the federal government, and that there was nothing else for me to do at this point in time, and they would contact me in the future. I'm somewhat skeptical when the government tells me there's nothing further for me to do and I will be contacted. So I wanted to know if this was correct and if you had a time frame for when the program was going to be implemented between the federal government and the state. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for that question. And I can't blame you for being skeptical. But here's the deal. We set up this PUA program. That's the unemployment insurance relief program for self-employed people, independent contractors, gig workers. Normally would not qualify for unemployment, but we want to make sure that you do in this crisis. The State Department of Labor wasn't ready for this. They weren't ready for the numbers of people who are applying. They didn't have the guidance they needed from the federal government to figure out how to deal with the self-employed folks. And so indeed, that's what they told everybody. Apply, you're going to get denied. And when we figure this out, when we get the guidance, we will get back to you and make sure that we help you out. This afternoon, actually, Governor Murphy announced that the initial group of beneficiaries under the PUA program will be notified starting today. So I can't tell you if you're in that initial group, but what that means is it's good news. They are getting this going, and they are beginning to reach out to people who applied to let them know, hopefully, that they're getting the assistance, including the enhanced $600 of assistance that the federal government is providing. So if you've already applied, it's true you don't actually need to do any more. If you haven't applied yet, then you should, and you'll still be denied officially. At least that's what the website will tell you. But in fact, you will be in that line and will be contacted. And the benefits are retroactive. So the regular benefit is retroactive to the week of February 2nd, and the additional $600 bonus, if you will, is retroactive to, I think, the week beginning March 29th. So that's the deal. But, if you don't hear anything, reach out to us and we'll see what's going on for you.
Thank you. We will take our next call. This is Camille. Camille, can you please tell us where you're calling from and then go ahead with your question?
Yes, I'm in Bridgewater. Good evening, Congressman. Congressman, I have a question about the post office. What action will Congress be taking to ensure the security of the postal system?
Yeah, so the post office is in trouble financially right now, and it's not the fault of the post office. The post office is actually breaking even or making a small profit on its mail service. The problem that they have is that Congress, for whatever reason, like 15 years ago, foisted on them an obligation to prepay their pension obligations 50 years in advance for its employees. And that's a huge burden that no big company in America faces, and sure enough, the post office is in trouble because of it. We obviously need the post office more than ever right now when people are home, when we're relying more than ever on deliveries. By the way, we need the post office for elections in America because every state, to some extent, some states 100% use vote by mail. So we can't have elections in America without the post office. So we have to fix this. The House of Representatives has proposed in the last bill we passed, in the CARES bill, that we stabilize the finances of the post office. The Senate under Majority Leader McConnell said no. The President said no at that point. I think they realized that we have to do something in the next bill. The President has said he wants to jack up rates for some reason. I don't quite get why this is the moment to do that, especially when the post office is actually, again, making money off of its mail service. But at least they're talking now, which tells me that they recognize something has to be done. And if we're talking, if we're negotiating, that probably means we're going to reach a solution. I will fight like hell to make sure that we do it. We do need the post office in this country, especially now. Thank you so much for asking that.
Thank you very much. Up next is Joe. Joe, go ahead with your question, please.
Good evening, Congressman Malinowski. My question dovetails on the last question. My name is Joe. I'm from Hillsborough, New Jersey. I just wanted to know about the funding for vote by mail and to ensure that we can all vote in our next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That's a really important issue. All of us, I think, saw what happened in Wisconsin when they had that primary election a couple of weeks ago in the middle of the pandemic. And I was just furious. This is America. Nobody in America should be forced to choose between their right to vote and their right to life. Nobody should be told that if you want to go vote, you have to risk your life. This is not Iraq or Afghanistan. This is America. And if we see a resurgence of this epidemic in the fall, which is possible, there will certainly be some states that have similar problems unless they allow everybody to vote by mail. Now, a lot of states, including New Jersey, already allow that, so that's good. But not every state does. So what we've tried to do in Congress, what we tried to do in the House, was to require every state in America to allow vote by mail, and we wanted to provide some funding to help those states make the transition. We had a debate about that, and the results, because the Senate and the President opposed what we were trying to do, we ended up with some money to help states, but not a mandate, not a requirement. So we're going to have that argument again in the next bill. And meanwhile, we'll take that argument to all the states that are still holding back. I think we're making progress. New Hampshire was one of those states, and they have a Republican governor who supports the president, I think, on most things, but decided that the safety of his electorate was more important than anything else. So they're going to vote by mail, at least allowing it. Pennsylvania's doing that. So I think we're getting closer to where we need to be, and I will keep up the fight because There are a lot of things we can postpone in America. We can postpone the baseball season. We can postpone a rock concert. We cannot postpone the November election.
Our next call is Todd. Todd, please tell us where you're calling from, and then go ahead with your question.
Good evening, Congressman. I'm Todd calling from Roxbury. My question is, as you know, the CARES Act for local governments put a cap on, in order to receive it, a population of 500,000. So it wasn't based on impact from the virus. So, for example, Morris County does not have 500,000. Additionally, the governor has publicly stated that the state will be unable to use all the funds they receive because they have to be for COVID-19 specific expenses and not expenses. So my question is there anything in the act that would prevent the state from giving it to a county like Morris County, which set up testing sites and without any funding from the state on PPE and test kits? And would you pressure the governor of New Jersey to do that?
Yeah, so you explained the situation very, very well. The CARES Act allocated $150 billion, which sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. Allocated that to states and local governments to help us deal with the crisis, but only to government entities with more than 500,000 population. So that rules out every town in New Jersey and many of our counties. And number two, the money could only be used to pay for direct COVID expenses like purchasing PPE or ventilators. So can the state use all of that money? No, it can't use most of it because what it really needs, what all of us need, is to help compensate for revenues that are lost because the economy is shut down, right? Tax revenues are going to be drying up. It could share some of that money with Morris County, to answer your specific question, to help with the test site, to help with purchase of PPE. That's absolutely true. And I have been pressing the governor to help all of our counties in my district do those things. And we've gotten a little bit of help, but we could get more. What's more important, and here is my top priority over the next couple of weeks, and that is in the next bill, we need to create a fund for state and local governments that is, number one, much more flexible so that state and local governments can use it to make up for lost revenue. And number two, that has no population limit. So not only Morris County, but every town in Morris County, every town in our district, no matter how small, can qualify for some of the assistance. I think that's really important because we can't rely on the state in this crisis. The state is itself in crisis. And number two, not every little town in New Jersey is equally affected by the infections in this epidemic. But every town is suffering the same economic difficulty, right? Because the economy's shut down for all of us. Businesses are closed in every township and borough in New Jersey. So that's what I've been insisting on, and we've made progress. I've been talking to Speaker Nancy Pelosi about this. I now have her commitment that the House bill, the bill that we will introduce in the House, is going to do what I've been asking for. So that's where we're going to go in when we start negotiating with the Senate, with McConnell, and with the President. That's our opening position. Senator McConnell, a few days ago, basically said that states like New Jersey should drop dead. We should declare bankruptcy. We put a lot of pressure on him. He heard from a lot of not just Democratic governors and mayors, but Republican governors and mayors across the country. In our district, about 54 of our mayors and county freeholders got on a letter that I organized, Republicans and Democrats, to our leadership in Washington saying, come on, we need this. And yesterday, McConnell said, yeah, but we're going to have state and local assistance in the next bill. So he's come down from the hard no of a few days ago. So I'm fighting hard. We're making progress. We're not there yet. And obviously, I'll report to everybody where we end up.
Thank you. Our next caller is Zach. Zach, can you please tell us where you're calling from, and then go ahead with your question.
Hey, Congressman Malinowski, thank you for your time. I'm calling from Cranford, New Jersey. So I believe the next rung of the stimulus program is going to be 4. Just want to see what we're doing about bringing in robotics, sustainable energy for new plants. I think 90%, I've heard statistics ranging from 90 to 98% of PPE and pharma is done overseas. I'm just trying to see what we're trying to bring that back to the country and what the incentives are going to be, hopefully, in those programs going forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. We're way too dependent on foreign supply for medical equipment, including China, but not only China. So I've got a bill that's going to be part of the next big coronavirus bill, which tries to fix our national stockpile of PPE for the next crisis. What my bill basically does is it says that at the beginning of every year, Department of Health and Human Services have to publicly tell us all, the American people and the Congress, exactly how much we need, how many masks, how many gloves, how many ventilators, how many drugs do we need to sustain another pandemic like this. And to basically tell the Congress, here's how much it's going to cost to maintain the stockpile up to that amount. And then it's on the Congress under public pressure, under a public spotlight, to say yes or no. And I think we would say yes under those circumstances. So that's all about making sure we have enough. And then we also are putting in Buy America provisions into the next bill to try to stimulate domestic production of this. The president already has the authority under something called the Defense Production Act to order companies in the United States to step up production. He's done that on a couple of occasions. He hasn't done that systematically enough. So we will do what we can through legislation.
Thank you. Our next question is
that answers the question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Natalie in Springfield, who asked that her question be read. And the question is, she can't get an answer to her unemployment claim and hasn't received a stimulus check, and it's been five weeks. She's also wondering if there will be another stimulus check.
So, you're not alone, Natalie. There are a lot of people who are frustrated. The system has not worked as well as it should, as well as we intended. That's on us to fix. We tried to improve it in the interim bill that we passed, but there's much more that we have to do, and I take responsibility for my share of that. As for your specific situation, I would invite you to reach out to our office directly. As I mentioned, all of my staff are now working on individual cases like yours. We've had over 1,000 constituents reach out to us for help. We've been able to resolve several hundred of those cases. It's overwhelming, but my first responsibility, my first commitment is to try to make sure that the promise Congress made is kept for everybody I represent, and we'll help folks one person at a time until that's done. Thank you so much.
Our next question is from Samita. Samita, please go ahead with your question and tell us where you're calling from.
Hello.
Hi, Sunita.
Yes, yeah. Good afternoon, Congressman Malinowski and my fellow listeners. Congressman, I have three small questions. First, we haven't received our stimulus checks. What should we do? Number two is PPP. Some banks they are not accepting new applications. What should we do? Such as PNC. So what we should do? And the third question is, we have few questions to unemployment offices. Of course, we know that they are very busy, but no one is answering or picking up the phone or returning our calls. What should we do? So thank you.
Thank you. Again, you're not alone. I know that's not 100% reassuring, but lots of folks are going through exactly what you just outlined. Can I ask you on the stimulus check, have you given the IRS your direct deposit information for your bank account, either in your last tax return or directly on their website? Do they have your direct deposit info?
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay. Then again, I would suggest reaching out to us directly after this. And all we can do is we can call them and try to figure out what's going on. Because if they have your direct deposit info and you qualify based on your income, remember the stimulus checks are for folks who made $75,000 or less in the last year, $150,000 for a couple filing jointly. But if you qualify, you should be getting it. So we can look into that for you. On banks not accepting new applications, I would say, to heck with them. Go to another bank. I would look at some of the smaller community banks and credit unions that just got an enhanced portion of the money that we approved. I think they're a lot better dealing with smaller customers, with our true small businesses in our community. You can also try PayPal, which is taking PPP applications online. I would encourage you to do it as quickly as possible because, as you've seen, there is a line, and the money's going out in order of people applying for it. For banks, for the big banks that aren't accepting applications or they're treating their customers badly, I think some of those big banks are going to lose their customers, and that's okay. And then on unemployment, again, that's a typical story. The system is just totally overwhelmed. We have 20 million people we have 20% unemployment in the United States right now, and that's just in a couple of months. And so the New Jersey system has frankly been completely overwhelmed, and people are not many times getting calls back, and that's where our office has been able to step in and again help folks individually, not in every case, but certainly in some cases. All I can say is, and this is just a commitment, if you qualify for this assistance that Congress promised, you are going to get it. I wish that you had gotten it already, but this is a promise. This is something we said would happen, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that it does if it hasn't already for you. So hang in there. And remember, it's retroactive. So even if you get approved late, it's retroactive to earlier in the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And best of luck.
Folks on the call, we just want to encourage you to please press 7 on your keypad if you have an email address that you want to share with the Congressman. Press 7. He'll keep you up to date on all the resources and information he's talking about on this call and other important items from his office. So please press 7 at any time. We'll take our next caller. This is Alexi. Alexi, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for doing this. So this is also another labor question, unemployment question. There are some people in a situation where they were unemployed prior to the pandemic. Their benefits have expired recently or have been exhausted. And according to the CARES Act, I believe those people are also entitled to 13 weeks extension plus $600 extra per week. My mother being one of those people, she's been unable to do anything about this. And I think the website has been telling her the state is seeking guidance from the federal government. So I don't think it's a technical issue with the website. I believe it's an issue with communication between the federal and state governments. So I wanted to see if there's any resolution on the horizon for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexi. So all of that is correct. Mm-hmm. she is entitled to 13 weeks, to 13-week extension. The website has not been helpful, but I'm told that actually there is now new guidance on the website. So if you guys haven't checked today, I would encourage you to do that, because I've been told there is now more helpful guidance there. Now, the way this is supposed to work, and I know, not everybody believes this, but that is supposed to be automatic. So they are supposed to basically, reach out to you and let you know that it's coming. If they haven't done that, I think the website now has information about how to apply for it if for some reason she falls into the category of not getting it automatically. So take a look at that. And again, if you still if you're still in the dark in a few days, please let us know, and we'll see what we can find out for you.
Thank you very much. We had a question come in that asked to be read, and the question is, with the stimulus package, has there been any consideration to relax the SALT tax limitations?
Yeah, great question for all of us in New Jersey. SALT deduction, the state and local tax deduction, that's what was taken away from us in the 2017 tax bill. It's been a huge economic hit for homeowners in particular all across New Jersey, and we've been trying ever since to get it back. In my first year in office in 2019, I made this a big priority, and in December, I helped lead an effort in the House. We passed a bill to restore it fully, but that was just in the House. The Senate is not taking our bill up. So now in the face of this COVID-19 epidemic, a bunch of us have made the case that it's got to be revisited. It's a really good way of getting cash into the hands of hardworking people in states that happen to have also been hit the hardest by the COVID-19 epidemic, including New Jersey and New York. So we propose putting some SALT relief, even if only temporary, into the next bill. Speaker Pelosi endorsed that publicly about a month ago, so we'll have to see what happens. But I don't want to raise people's hopes too much on this, because I think this is one where Senator McConnell is still pretty dead set against us. The tax reform bill in 2017, I think for him and some others was, well, they considered a big achievement. It hurt us badly, but they still think it was a good idea. So it's a fight we're going to have. I'm not sure right now if it's a fight we can win this year in this Congress. We will eventually, though, because this was a wrong that must be righted.
Up next, we have Robert. Robert, can you tell us where you're calling from? And then go ahead with your question for Congressman Malinowski.
My name is Robert from Union Township.
Hey, Robert.
Hello. Hi, Congressman.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you. I'm employed by a corporation that's more than 500 people. And as far as the CARES Act is concerned, we've had 7 cases of COVID-19 at our job. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how they're supposed to get paid in regards to the time off that they need to recover. And also, second question for you as well is I'm looking for clarity in regards to if someone in your household gets COVID-19, is it mandatory that you quarantine for 14 days in your household? Thank you.
So on the first question, if anybody gets sick, they're supposed to get paid sick leave, and that's under New Jersey state law as well. So if your company isn't doing that, that's a problem. But they're supposed to get at least 2 weeks of paid leave. So is that not the case for your company?
And they basically said if you have vacation time, you have to use any personal time that you have, sick time, in regards to that.
Oh man!
And if you don't have any sick time or vacation time, then you have to go to unemployment or FMLA.
Yeah, I don't like that. That they're basically pushing people off onto the unemployment system. No, they reach out to us separately, and we'll see if you'd like us to look into that. I'd be happy to do that. That does not sound right to me. They should be giving everybody paid sick leave.
Because the CARES Act states that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, but there's also state law on this.
Okay.
Not to mention just kind of basic moral responsibility. And then you asked about the quarantine.
Yes, is it mandatory?
It's certainly highly advised. Let me put it that way. Anybody who's been in contact with somebody who's been sick should absolutely quarantine for 2 weeks.
Just trying to get clarity on that regard, because I need to. I'm the shop steward for our location. We had 2 people that are out in my shop that have gotten sick, and I'm trying to figure out how they're supposed to get paid.
Yeah.
And they're basically telling me FMLA and unemployment.
Yeah, let's have a separate conversation about that, because I'd like to know more details and see if we can help you resolve it. But it doesn't sound right to me. But on the quarantine, yeah, just look, as a general rule, anybody, if you've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive, a family member, coworker, if you've had close contact, you've got to play it safe and quarantine, not just for your own sake, but for everybody's sake. You do not want an outbreak, a bigger outbreak of this in your company. So that's what I think any public health expert would strongly advise.
Okay, we will take our next question. This is George. George, can you tell us where you're calling from, and go ahead with your question.
Yes, I'm Dr. George Melendick from Far Hills. I'm a physician with a specialty in public health and an office in Edison, working out of JFK Hospital. First of all, thank you for having the conference call. I think it's really important. I would say that every question I've heard this evening is very critical and important to have answered. My question has more to do with the issue of testing. We have heard for many weeks that there's not enough testing, and in fact there isn't. And even I, as a physician, had to wait almost 4 weeks to get tested, even though I'm taking care of patients with COVID and exposures. I know we've had drive-ins and so on, but what I don't understand and would like an answer to is here in New Jersey, which has a history of the center of the pharmaceutical industry and a history of excellent manufacturing, how is it possible after this length of time that we have not had the swabs, reagents, and ability to organize testing for everyone? You mentioned before testing, and I think another caller did, but we need to be doing testing on everyone, healthy people, young people, old people, sick people, and so on, and it's not happening. So what is the explanation for that? I simply don't understand it.
Well, here. I share your anger and frustration. Look, there's a critical shortage of every single piece of equipment, everything that's needed to conduct testing, from the chemical reagents to the test kits to gloves and masks and gowns for the people who are collecting the test samples. And it's partly because this thing hit the whole world at the same time. And suddenly the entire world is desperately looking for exactly the same stuff at exactly the same time. And some countries prepared earlier than we did, to be frank. There were critical decisions made by the federal government in January and February not to prepare, not to stimulate production of all of the things that we need. This country makes something like 300 million cans of soda every single day. We had the capacity to ramp up to make enough test kits and gloves and masks and reagents. We started late, and so here we are. We're better off than we were 2 months ago, but we're not where we need to be. New Jersey was hit hard. One really interesting statistic that's not a happy one for New Jersey is that right now our positivity, the percentage of tests taken in New Jersey that turn out positive, is about 43%. That's cumulative from the beginning of the crisis. I think you take a snapshot of tests being taken today, I can tell you in Somerset and Hunterdon counties, it's still about 31%. That is much greater than any state in the country. And it's because we're still just testing symptomatic people who have a fever, people who are, showing other signs of being sick. The World Health Organization says you shouldn't reopen your economy until you get that positivity rate down to 10%, to a point where most people who are testing are not sick. And, I've been talking to the governor about this and to our state public health authorities. They've got a plan to double the number of tests that are being taken daily in New Jersey over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think we actually have to do a lot better than that to get to a point where we can safely reopen. I think one way or another, we're going to reopen. I want to do it safely. I want to do it with a system in place, with contact tracing, with isolation for people who are still sick, that enables us to really beat this and to get our economy going and not to have to go through the same thing again in the fall. So thank you for raising that. I light a fire on this every single day in every way that I can, having personally worked to try to stand up testing in some of our counties. We now need to vastly expand it, and I'll do my best to help with that.
Thank you, Congressman. We had a question that came in that would like asked to be read. The question is, as a high schooler, I'd like to get more involved and try to help out in the community during this pandemic. Do you have any suggestions on how best to do that?
So there are a lot of volunteer efforts going on, and some of them have been led by high school students. We had a couple of high schools in Morris County, including Mount Olive High, where the kids got together and used their 3D printer that they used for their science lab to print out face masks for healthcare workers and first responders, and they printed out thousands of them. This was not a token contribution. It was like a hugely significant contribution from just a couple of high schools. I know a lot of other kids are involved in food drives. They're involved in efforts to make check-in calls to seniors in our community. We got a lot of people who are stuck at home and feeling very, very lonely. And sometimes just getting a call from somebody makes all the difference. I've got some of my campaign volunteers from my last campaign doing that because we want to give them something positive to do for the community. And if you want to put in that question in the voicemail at the end of the call, we may be able to connect you with some of those volunteer opportunities. And thank you so much for wanting to do that.
Here's our next question. This comes from Jeff in Millburn, and Jeff asked for his question to be read. He's asking, what's going to happen to our economy considering the Fed is printing unlimited amounts of money right now? How is that money going to get paid back?
It's a fair question, but I'll tell you this. If we weren't doing it, if we were not rescuing the U.S. economy right now, we would be going into a Great Depression. And the first years of the 2020s would look like the first years of the 1930s. So I am going to do everything I can to rescue our economy now. Every economist I talk to says that it's a necessary expenditure just to keep things going. And the good news is that interest rates, partly as a result of this mess we're in, are basically at 0%. by some measures even negative. And so, if there's a time to be borrowing money in a crisis, this is that time. I was very much against the tax bill in 2017 because we basically threw a lot of money at the economy through a corporate tax cut that the economy didn't need at that point because it was going strong. That was a waste. That was adding debt in a wasteful way. This is an unfortunate necessity, and we're going to do it, and hopefully it'll allow us to get back to a productive economy relatively soon, so that we can start generating wealth again in America.
Thank you. Up next, we have Marianne. Marianne, can you tell us where you're calling from, and then go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm from Alpha. Tom, thanks very much for all the work you've been doing in your town halls. I very much appreciate it. I am on Social Security, and I have not received my $1,200 check. And I don't understand what the holdup is on that. And my second question is, my daughter lost her job right after she moved because of Corona. And she's now living in Easton. And she cannot get through to unemployment. She's been trying every day, couple hours a day, and it keeps crashing. If she called your office, would you help her?
Thank you so much for the question. So on the Social Security question, it's a little mysterious because my understanding is that it was supposed to be automatic for most folks on Social Security, that the government has your direct deposit information. But again, I would put that in the category of we'll look into it for you if you reach out to us separately, because you should absolutely be getting that $1,200 check. Your daughter in Easton, if she called us up, we would probably, I got to be honest, we would probably refer her to the member of Congress who represents Easton. We actually have been getting a lot of calls from folks outside of my district. I think it's because we've gotten a good reputation for being responsive and calling people back quickly and having a human being who's actually going to help out. And so we've been getting a lot of calls from other districts, but we just can't help everybody in the country because I've got, just a small number of staff people trying to help now over 1,000 of our constituents who've asked for help. So I think what we would do is refer her to somebody in that members of Congress his office, and hopefully they'll be able to do exactly what I can do for my constituents.
All right. Now we have Mary Lynn. Mary Lynn, can you tell us where you're calling from, and then go ahead with your question.
Yes, this is Mary Lynn. I'm calling from Long Valley. Thanks for taking my call. I have to say I am so concerned about several friends and family members of mine who are small business owners. They feel that they can't apply for unemployment under the PUA, but I've urged them to do so. I know that there are loans and grants that are supposed to be available for these small businesses. These are sole proprietorships. However, what they're saying is, I can't take out a loan at this point. I have no income. All I'm doing is getting myself further into debt. So I guess I'm trying to get some clarification on whether a sole proprietor LLC can apply for unemployment under the PUA.
Yes. In general, yes. I mean, there may be some specific circumstances that we'd have to get into more detail, but yes, it is intended for people who are self-employed. And as we had another caller ask about that process, which was difficult because the state didn't have guidance from the federal government, and So people were waiting and waiting and waiting. And what we heard today from the governor was that they are now processing those claims from self-employed folks and beginning to pay them out. So that's absolutely one option. The loans, the small business loans could be an option as well. The rules say that you get the loan and the loan can be forgiven if you retain your employees. Now, if you're a sole proprietor, you're your only employee, that may apply, that may be helpful or it may not be, because you also have to spend 75% of the loan amount on retaining your employees. You can spend 25% on rent or the mortgage or other stuff, but 75% has to be personnel costs. If you can do that, then the loan is forgiven. It's free money. You don't have to pay it back. If you can't, then you have to pay back at least a proportionate amount. So I would still encourage them to look into that and see how it might apply to their case. But either that or the enhanced unemployment provisions should be able to help.
Thank you, folks. And this is your last call. If you would like to submit your email address to the Congressman's office, please press 7 now, 7 on your keypad, so you can get the latest information from his office. We're going to take our next caller. This is Simos. Simos, go ahead with your question and correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Yes, my name is Simos. I'm calling from Branchburg, New Jersey. And I have a 3-part question for Mr. Malinowski. First of all, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the call and for your town hall. I think it's very informative. My questions are as follows. When it comes to testing, why is it that we're going back and forth between federal and state? And who's actually responsible for doing the testing, the adequate testing, to ensure that 100% of our citizens are tested, or at least New Jerseyans are tested? That's the first question. The second question I have is I'm a business owner, and I was fortunate enough to receive the PPP loan, but it is my understanding that it's for 2 months, which means that at the end of 2 months, 2 things have to happen. We either, employ everybody back and pay them. However, my concern is that at the end of 2 months, we're not going to be open for business. And thus we're going to be forced to, put our employees back on unemployment again, which is, counterproductive. And is Congress looking into possibly extending the PPP program beyond the 2 months so that businesses have the opportunity to use that money, not just in a 2-month period, but in the next 6-month period, for example? And then my third part of the question is business interruption insurance. We do have business interruption insurance, but insurance companies, basically they don't cover us because of the pandemic. And is Congress looking into that? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Got it. Thank you, Simos. Thanks for those questions. On testing and who's responsible, well, first of all, the system that we need it's a system in which all hands are on deck. We want to get to a point. Right now you can get tested. You said you live in Branchburg. Is that right? We actually have a drive-through testing facility in Branchburg, but it's only for people who are symptomatic. We want to get to a point where you can go to your local Rite Aid or Walgreens or CVS pharmacy and get tested there. We want to be using much simpler tests. There's a saliva test that Rutgers University has developed that we want to get into much broader circulation because it's much, much easier to administer. You don't need as much of, the personal protective equipment. Eventually, it'll be something you can do in your own home. So we're going to have all kinds of different tests, all kinds of different providers distributing these. But who's responsible? In my view, it's the federal government. In my view, it is the Trump administration that should be taking responsibility for this very important reason. Otherwise, every single state, every single county, every single town in America is going to continue competing for the supplies. that are necessary to do testing. And that jacks up the price. It creates all kinds of supply problems. This is what the federal government is for in a time of crisis, to mobilize the economy, to produce what we need to help people, and to distribute it, to take responsibility for distributing it based on need. I think anyone who's been following the debate about this knows that President Trump has been reluctant to accept that responsibility. He said, well, the states should just do this. And the states have been trying to do it. They've been trying to get together, to have multi-state compacts, and we have one with New York and Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, to try to cooperate. But there's no substitute for a national strategy. So in the last bill we passed, we provided $25 billion, and we did get the president to agree that he would give us a national strategy. So we'll see what happens there. We're going to stay on top of him and on top of that. On the PPP, the small business loans, number one, I'm really glad to hear that you got yours. I'm hearing more of that from small business owners, so that's a good sign. And yes, I agree with you. We should be prepared to extend it beyond 2 months based on need. I have endorsed a proposal to make it automatic based on objective conditions in the economy. If we're still at a point where it's really hard for many of our small businesses to bring their employees back, then this facility should be there for you. Because as you said, the alternative is you put your workers on unemployment, and guess who pays for that? Taxpayers pay for that too. I'd rather pay to keep them attached to your company so that your company can come out of this hole. And I think there was a third question, but I forgot it. Could you remind me?
You know the caller's on mute, Congressman?
He is? Okay. Well, I'm embarrassed I forgot the third part, but hopefully parts 1 and 2 were answered well enough. And Simos, if you've got an additional question, there'll be an opportunity to leave a message for us at the end of the call, and we will get back to you.
Thank you. We'll take our next question from Betty Ann. Betty Ann, tell us where you're calling from, and then go ahead with your question. Betty Ann, are you there? I'll read her question. Betty Ann's question is regarding the CARES Act. How can the government do better about getting information regarding the stimulus checks out to people? There seems to be a lot of misinformation circulating around right now.
Yeah, there's misinformation about a lot of things, and as a general rule, we should all be wary of stuff that we read on the internet and on social media, and try to get reliable information from reliable sources. I know everyone in this call knows that, but we all, myself included, need to be reminded of it. Look, I think at this point we've put these programs into place. They may be adjusted a little bit, they may be extended a little bit, but what we've done is pretty much what we're going to have. And so I think, although there were a lot of problems in the first few days because it was also new, I think the information that's available online on the various government websites is now more up to date and more helpful. If you look at my website, my congressional website, we've got fact sheets up there on all of these programs that explain how they're supposed to work. And of course, we're available to, as I've mentioned several times, to answer questions from constituents directly. If you're confused about something, if you want to verify whether something is true that you've heard or not true, let us know, and we will do our best to set things straight.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Unfortunately, we're at our allotted time for this evening. Folks, if you'll please hang on the phone line, you can leave a voicemail at the end of the call coming up here in just a moment. But before the call ends, Congressman, we will turn it to you to bring us to the finish line, please.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait till we get to the true finish line. We're We're obviously not there yet, but as I said at the start of the call, for anybody who's missed it, the sacrifices that we are making right now, each and every one of us, are saving lives. They're saving the lives of thousands and thousands of our fellow Americans and fellow New Jerseyans who otherwise would be succumbing to this terrible, terrible disease. We are breaking the back of the coronavirus. We are bending that curve. So let's keep doing this. And meanwhile, my job is to try to keep making it economically possible for everybody to do this, and to make sure that we have the systems in place, especially widespread testing, that allows us to start getting back to our normal lives as soon as it's possible, as soon as it's safe. I think our safety, our health, our lives have to be our number one priority, because if we do not have those things, well, we don't have an economy, we don't have a country. So let's get this right. Let's do this right. Let's do this once. And through the difficult moments, I will do everything I can. My staff, my whole team will do everything we possibly can to try to ease the burdens for everybody. With that, thank you again so much for being part of this call. Please stay healthy. Please stay safe. Please stay in touch. And I'll sign off.